Thank you so much for coming. Good count. So my name is Shashi, and today I'm going to talk about full stack Flutter testing. And before we start, I hate this slide, but for this talk it's needed because you need to know who I am and what should you expect from this talk. So I work for a company called Exitech, which is my own company, just myself. And my background is about mobile DevOps, automating release pipelines, CI/CD, and test automation. So work I have done in recent year is all inside the Apple bubble. So Xcode, native Apple developer tools, and automating basically iOS pipelines. I'm Flutter rookie, and I started some Flutter side project and exploring Flutter and different kind of techniques of deploying Flutter application and testing Flutter applications. So this is the agenda for today. So we will go through the Flutter testing pyramid and cover different sort of testing techniques like unit testing, widget testing, integration testing, which is also kind of a UI testing. And we will also cover screenshot testing and BDD styles testing, if you heard about Cucumber or that sort of behavior driven development tools. And at the end we will cover how to add those tests on continuous integration services. So if you're listening to me and have any feedback, any opinion, so this is my Twitter handle. So feel free to tweet anything, good, bad, abuse me if you want, that's fine. So this is kind of the testing pyramid. And in Flutter world, we got unit test, widget test, and integration test. So if you see the normal testing pyramid, like so this one. So basically the testing pyramids they become kind of joke these days because every year in testing conference someone comes up with his own version of testing pyramid. And but this is something I found which kind of makes sense. Like so developers write unit test to test their own components or methods or functions. Then we got a component test where few components come together and we test it together. Then we got integration test. Integration test is different modules combined together and we write test. The API test, which we cover like a service level test where we call the backend or whatever services and check the responses are coming through okay. And finally we have a UI test or functional test which actually perform the user journeys, like tap on the different elements and perform user journey like a real user does. And after that there are various things like manual testing, exploratory testing. There's so many kinds of testing, non-functional testing, performance testing, load testing, that kind of stuff. But in the Flutter world, we currently have three types of test, at least defined in documentation. You might find some documentation on performance testing as well, like how to profile your Flutter app. But these are the three types of test which we normally found in a Flutter. So what is unit testing? Probably almost every one of you must have doing this kind of testing. So in unit test, you basically import Flutter test package, and once you get the Flutter test package, you write unit test for the code that you are currently writing. So this is example test for addition. You probably don't write test for algebra or mathematics, but you might be writing for your components. there's no need to talk more about it because you're probably doing that on daily basis. So next thing is the widget testing. How many of you currently write widget test?
Widget test.
Yeah. Cool. Few hands. I think, in my opinion, the widget testing is kind of a huge expansion in testing technologies that bring up by Flutter team, because widget testing allows us to run your test like a UI kind of test in such a faster way, like almost it executes in a unit test like speed. But what we're testing is you creating a UI and you actually perform action on a UI, and then you asserting that the functionality is working as expected. So I haven't seen any this kind of testing in any other framework. So I tried many frameworks like Ruby, PHP, Swift, Kotlin, but I haven't seen any kind of testing. They got like a screenshot testing where you can take a screenshot and compare. There are some tools, for example, comparing the screenshots, take a screenshot, compare the screenshot. But so this is phenomenal because the way widget testing work is basically we have to create the guy called widget tester, and what that widget tester will do is like you have to create the widgets, which you probably already doing in your app, and before we start test, we have to pump that widget. Means you have to inject that UI into your test, and so this test is basically for, if you see the Flutter default app, like the increment app, if you tap on plus button, the counter goes on incrementing 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is test for this one. So basically it's we create an app, we pump the widget, we make some actions, like we tap on the plus button, and we expect that the UI changes, and we see that now the count is 1. And we got so many the actions available for widget testing. Also, we have some matches as well. So you can match like finds on the widget, or you can find elements by icon or by key, or yeah. So so this is kind of amazing kind of testing the Flutter has introduced. So on top of the widget testing, so you can pump your normal app, like your main app, but if you want to do something like hard to test scenarios, like edge cases or something that you can't create using your normal app, so you can write your own widgets to get your app into that particular state. And once you get app into that particular state, then you can pump that widget for testing, perform some action, and check that your app is functioning as expected. So as I said, there's so much the API provides actions like interacting with the widget. Also, there are some matcher for assertion, so you can do different sort of tests with widget testing. So third kind of testing is integration testing, so which is kind of UI level testing. It's weird that why Flutter guys called this integration testing. I don't understand, because integration testing, as per the normal testing pyramid, is kind of testing that you do after unit testing. But it's kind of a UI level testing where you actually deploy your app into devices and then tap on the different widgets or different elements and check your app is performing as expected, as a real user would use your app. So in order to enable the integration testing, you have to use a different package, which is called Flutter driver. So you need to import the Flutter driver, and you also need to write a test in 2 steps. So basically, first you have to create instrumented version of your app, and then you write a test against that instrumented version of your app. So it's a bit different than any other types of testing that we talked, like unit testing and widget testing, because your unit test and the widget test has access to your the APIs and data in your app, but integration test is completely different. So it doesn't know anything about your app, because you have to create a separate instrumented app and then you have to test independently. It also runs in a separate thread and process, so you can't directly interact with the integration test. So if you use like tools like Appium, XUI Test, Espresso, it's similar kind of testing, basically. Anyone doing UI testing here for Flutter apps? Cool. So yeah, it's kind of like if you come from like a web Selenium or Appium, XUI Test, Espresso is kind of a similar kind of tools in other mobile testing scenarios. So in the first step, we have created the instrumented version of our app. That means we have to create a separate directory. Usually that's called by default the Flutter suggested test driver, something like that. And then we have to create an app. So in the app, what we do is enable the Flutter driver extension. If you enable that one, that means you have created now instrumented version of your app. And you run the app. And once you run the app, then you're actually able to write your test. So how does the normal test looks like? So basically, this is kind of similar sort of test that we talked about, like we just launched the app in the real device and check the text is there. So very simple test. So in the setup, we are connecting to the app. So basically, we are deploying the app. It launched locally somewhere and connect to that process. In the tier time, we close that connection. And in the actual test, we got serializable finder, which is object we can use to find the elements within the UI. And so we have some actions like a tap and the clicks. So the Flutter driver API provides those sort of actions. So we can use those actions, and finally we can assert that the UI has been changed. So this kind of testing is good because you can actually find the real bugs. How much unit testing or integration the widget testing you do, it doesn't cover the normal user journey, and you probably not catch the bugs that real user do. So UI testing is important, but at the moment, the Flutter UI testing has limitations. And the limitations are basically, one of the limitation is it is not supported by any cloud vendors at the moment. What I mean is basically if you want to run the test, you have to run it on your devices. You can get the device, run into your own device, that's fine. But if you want to with different version, so usually in other mobile testing things, we hire the cloud testing vendors. Some of them are Test Lab or Amazon Device Farm, Source Labs. The companies like that provides the devices in the cloud. So you connect to their devices and you execute your test on their cloud devices. At the moment, nobody supports the Flutter integration test because at the moment they work is like they take XC test bundle or Appium test and execute in the cloud, but they haven't added any support for the Flutter app set. Another thing is UI test or integration test are very slow. If you want to watch them running, you probably go for sleep or something like that, or maybe go for coffee. And if you have more tests, maybe you will go for lunch. So yeah, they are basically very, very slow tests. And the mocking is amazingly difficult, because if you got unit test, widget test, you can use frameworks like Mockito, the mock your things. But in UI testing, it's very hard because you don't have access to your app data or app API. So some options are you have to run your local mock server somewhere, or create some dedicated testing environment and talk to them. Yeah, so at the moment it's very hard. And if you're a developer, you probably enjoy building your Flutter apps and maybe writing unit tests or widget tests. But UI testing is you probably ignore. So you might need to find QA engineers or something to write. And you need to find QA engineer with Dart and Flutter driver experience, which is incredibly difficult at this stage. So I will talk about this screenshot on and behavior-driven development kind of testing. So I saw there are few Dart packages recently released to do this kind of testing. So one of them is screenshots. So screenshot is just now just taking the screenshot whenever you wanted to do when you're running UI test. And the Flutter Gherkin is another new library which allows you to write tests in given when then format, if you heard about that. So these two libraries are there. I will show you in the demo once I'm done with this this talk. So the final thing is getting your test on continuous integration server. So how many of you have CI for your Flutter apps? Cool. Most of you have CIs. So the getting your Flutter app on CI, say imagine you got like a blank, totally blank machine and say, okay, run your Flutter app. So you have to do lots of things like provision your environment for Flutter and Dart. You need to get your Dart VM installed on your machine. Then once you got Flutter installed, then you're probably developing app for Android and iOS as well. So you need to get the iOS and Android dependencies. That means the Xcode command line tool, the Gradle, Android SDK, things like that. And if you want to build and test Android app, you need to script something else. For build notification and stuff, you need to write custom script to push the notification to your Slack channel, or maybe IRC or whatever communication channel you use. And the cloud CI providers like a Travis CI, Circle CI, they give you this kind of blank VM, and you have to provision everything by yourself. But good news is that there's the code magic. So code magic, you don't have to do any of this. So you just point your Flutter app to the code magic, and code magic will do everything for you. So build your app, test your app, and even publish the artifacts and push it to your Slack channel or whatever you configure there. So the demo time. So in the demo, I will be demonstrating what I've just talked. So let me sit down. Can you see that okay at the back? The terminal? Yeah? Cool. So I have created a sample app, so called Flutter Testing, and So at the moment, this app has nothing, just an app, no test, nothing. So if you can see here, there are no test directory, just our normal pub spec file, where you put the put your dependencies. So if you want to enable the unit testing, so you probably need to go. You need to get the package called Flutter test. At the moment, it's locked down with 151 with some weird issues, but this is the package you need for the unit testing, and you need to create a test directory, and inside test directory you write some unit test. So basically I have written some addition subtraction kind of test for the demo. But yeah, so once you got enough test, you can run the unit test using just using command flutter test. So flutter test will run your app and test all the things inside the test directory. So it shows like a 4 unit test all passed. So unit test is nothing we can talk about for unit test. Let's move on to the widget test. So the things we talk about widget test in the demo is we write the test like this. And test like this is basically we pump our widget, expect the previous state. We do some action like a tap on the increment button, and once we call the pump, then the action will be performed and we expect the new state. So basically first we have the counter at 0, then in the next one the counter at 1. So if I run the Flutter test now, so that will execute both unit and widget test. So you can see that now there are 5 tests including this one, but you can individually run the widget test like this. So you can pass the test name, and once you pass the test name, that will only execute the widget test. At the moment, what's happening behind the scene is basically is creating the UI, tapping on the UI and checking that your widget is doing expected action. So let's try and make this test fail maybe. Yeah, it failed because we changed the initial state of the things. We haven't seen anything, but this is literally pumping the UI and checking that the test is doing the right thing. So in the test, at the moment we pumped our main app, but what we can do is I talked about the custom widget test, and in the custom widget test, so you have the widget tester, and the widget tester you create your custom widget that you want to test. So basically we are adding that widget into our test itself and testing that is changing the value. Or even you can create your own widgets like this in the test. For example, anything which can be not related to your app. So whatever widget you want to create, you just have to pump it. So I created a few widgets here, like a to-do list. So to-do list has nothing to do with this app, but we have created the widgets. We want to test the UI independently, and so there are 3 tests basically doing different things. And it's starting the application. So as I said earlier, it's just so slow. So we have to wait. Yeah, so it runs the Xcode build. It's basically rebuild your application. yeah, bundle up all the resources, code sign it. Well, in this case, it doesn't code sign, but it performs at build state. So now Xcode build is done. Now our real test started. So in the real test, the app is hosted locally on this port. You can see that the application is started on this port, and it's actually asserting that this text is there. So you can see that the test is connected, and check that that this test is that text is there. So this is how the integration test or UI testing works in a Flutter. Another test is a screenshot test that I talked about. In the screenshot test, we have a similar sort of thing. So basically, we have to create a instrumented version. I created a separate instrumented app for this screenshot test demo, and what basically it does is we have to call this method called await screenshot driver, and you have to name the screenshot. So once you name the screenshot is saved to certain directory or certain path you want to store. So it's fairly simple. We need to define the config map, get the package. So package we got here is a screenshot, and we have to create the config file, basically where you want to store the screenshot, and which test you want to, which instrumented app you want to use for the screenshot testing, and which simulator or which device you want to take the screenshot on. So it doesn't launch any device or something like that. You just take the screenshot on at specific location. So you need to install that screenshot library. But if you run the test, say for example, now if I call screenshot.dot, it will again take that much time, but at the end of the test, we will have a screenshot stored at this location that we define. So, and in a temp screenshot directory, we will have a screenshot over there. So we can wait for this test, but this is how the UI testing works. So that's why probably it's getting ignored or something. It's just so slow. And in the Flutter, it's horribly slow because it takes ages to launch the simulator, get the build done. So currently we're doing it on iOS, but if you want to do it Android, I haven't tried it on Android, but it's probably the same thing. So it's testing. So all tests passed, and let's move to our /temp. And is it generated somewhere or no? Screenshot, yeah. So that is the screenshot. So if I open, yeah, so my screenshot is there. So basically, this is the screenshot at that point when the test was executing. So basically, there's nothing. Basically, you can take a screenshot, or maybe you can configure the screenshot whenever you want to see like what's the failing test or something like that. So nothing fancy at the moment with this library. And the final one I want to show you is which is kind of you might find interesting. It's still buggy, but it's kind of interesting. Probably the QA engineers will love this kind of testing. So this is basically so this is Flutter Gherkin library. So Gherkin is a Cucumber style BDD test, and literally we can write a test in a feature file format so everyone can understand. So given I launch the app, I tap on the button, then I see the expect counter to be 2, something like that. So anybody can write this kind of test, and we have to create a step definition for each steps. So step definitions are mapped inside the steps. So steps are currently this library provides the horrible way to just write the steps. So basically we have to map the regular expressions and create a different class for each step definitions. In the given test I connected to the app, and then I assert something. So I can't get properly working. It has some bugs, I think. So or maybe I'm doing something wrong. But our configuration for this kind of test is you need to define where are your feature file located. So in the config, you just define, okay, this is my feature file directory. And you have to mention all our step definitions. You have to register all your step definitions inside the config as well. So I have registered 2 step definitions, and you have to tell like which app you want to test. So currently we are testing instrumented version of app, and yeah, there are some similar sort of options. And if I run this test, so instead of that one, I just need to pass that the cucumber BDD test, which is our configuration. So basically this will let me see what's wrong there. Yeah, not sure. Just need to check the documentation of this. Sorry about that. I just missed the command. So this is basically the library. Flutter Kirkin. Somewhere. Somewhere it should show how to run this. Definitely I run in past, but I forgot this command. Yeah, so this is the way to, yeah, dot. We have to do dot. And yeah, this is a different way of running this command. I don't know why, but we have to use the dot to execute that one. So it's basically doing the same thing. It's launching the app and running in the simulator. But yeah, so it allows us to write tests in given when-then format. The library is currently under development, has some issues. So, but this is something you can keep an eye in the future if you want to use this kind of testing. I won't wait for this to build. And the final thing I want to show you is how to get your test on the CI server. So I got the app on the GitHub, and I just ran this build with the code magic. So basically this is the GitHub repo, and in the GitHub repo what I've done is basically in the test I have enabled all sort of tests. So I enabled my Flutter test, I enabled my driver test, and I'm telling stop the build if tests fail. And my tests are all on the CI branch. So in the test set, I just enable that one, and if I start a new build and I specify the CI branch and start a new build, so you can see that without any configuration, just ticking the boxes, it will execute my prepare machine, the page dependencies, and install, run the build. So while it's running, I would like to take the questions if you have any questions if you have at the moment. And yeah, we'll take it from there. Any questions?
Thank you for your talk. Test.
Yeah, work.
Okay, thank you for your talk. Have you tried golden file tests?
Golden
File tests.
yes, I heard while trying the screenshot test. So basically, it allows you to test the screenshot or something, but I haven't explored in detail like how it works in
I recommend checking it out because they work on widget tests, not on driver, Flutter driver. So they are as fast as widget tests.
Oh, right. Okay. Definitely. Is there any documentation on Flutter?
Not really, but there is one blog post I can give you a link
Okay, that would be
afterwards.
great.
Okay?
That would be great. That would be great to know. What's this called? Golden
File tests.
Golden file test. Okay. Thank you so much.
Anybody else?
Any other question?
Hi. So with UI tests, I understand they work the same way as Espresso does, and your automator on Android can do it. Yeah. So does it mean that we can actually get out of the app, go to the settings of the phone, change the setting like a font size, go back, and actually see if there is a change on it? Can we actually get out and fully navigate outside of the app when the driver is running?
No, I don't think so, because at the moment, Flutter driver is controlling just your app, not the other apps that you install on your devices. So Flutter driver just host your app locally in somewhere and communicate with that one. So you probably don't have ability to go to settings or something. For that, you have to step or mock this state, I think. But yeah, I don't think so. Flutter driver at the moment can do like going to settings or going to other apps installed on your device. So this is just for like your app. App is hosted somewhere, and you send the command to that app using the Flutter driver API, and that's how it is currently works.
Cool.
So.
Okay, that looks like it for questions. We're still going to have some at the end of the session. So let's take a quick break, maybe 15, 20 minutes or something, have a drink,
Yep.
and a round of applause for Shasha.
Thank you so much.